Hi everyone, this is William from the Headphone Experience, and I'm here tonight with my picks for the best headphone amps and amp DAC combos of the year, and this is part 2 of this video, so I'll be starting at $1,000 plus today. The first part of this video was everything under 1,000, and this part will be starting at 1,000 on up to about 2,500 is the limit of any amps I've reviewed so far. I did want to say thank you to everyone who's continued to watch my videos over the last 3 weeks or so. Most of you probably know by now I was hit by a bad case of Bell's palsy, and the right side of my face was completely paralyzed. And I did take a couple weeks off, but I decided to try to get back to my videos with a lot of encouragement from a lot of people. And this is about the fourth review I've done since this happened. And I am starting to recover a little bit. About 3 days ago, I started getting a little bit of movement above my right eyebrow and a little bit on the right side of my face, the corner of my mouth. I can actually slightly move it a little bit now. I'm probably still only at about maybe 5 or 10%, but at least starting to make a little progress. I was starting to feel a little discouraged after 3 weeks of no improvement, but I'm at about 3.5 weeks now, and over the last 3 days I have seen a little bit of improvement, so hopefully this is going to clear up soon and I can get back to normal. But anyway, I'm going to get to this video now, and I'm going to start. My first category is going to be $1,001 to $1,500, and the first headphone amp I wanted to talk about is the Waveborn Edelweiss 3 Preamp Plus, and you can see that down at the end of the shelf here. At the end, it's an OTL type tube amp. It can actually be used as a preamp and has 4 sets of inputs. Also has a balance control, which is very rare on headphone amps. That's only the second one I've reviewed so far that did have a balance control. The other was the SPL Phonitor XE. And both are kind of the same. It's just a very subtle balance control. This one is only plus or minus 2 decibels in each direction. So anyway, it's an OTL tube amp, which work really well with high impedance headphones, and it works pretty well with some of the easiest to drive planar magnetic headphones, which would be like the Kennertons and the Hi-Fi Man Ananda, and the third version, or the stealth version of the Hi-Fi Man Aria. But anything harder to drive than that, OTL tube amps aren't a good choice. But they do have a very nice, warm, but yet detailed, very smooth sound, and I've become a big fan of tube amps. So anyway, that is my number 1 pick in this category, 1,001 to 1,500. I do have an honorable mention that I wanted to talk about for a few seconds, and that would be the Wells Audio Dragon Level 1. There's 3 different levels of that, and the Level 1 goes for 1,500, and I believe the Level 2 is 2,500 and level 3 is 3,500. I'm not sure on those prices though, but the level 1 that I reviewed does sell for 1,500. I don't have that here to show you, but anyway, it's a hybrid tube amp, and it has an absolutely beautiful sound. It's very large. I think it's about 11 inches wide by about 17 inches deep. And has 2 tubes on the top, and like I said, it's a hybrid. It has a tube input stage and then a solid state output stage, and will run pretty much any headphone, including the hardest to drive planar magnetics that I have. Absolutely beautiful sound. I did have one small issue with it. It does have 4 different gain settings that are little switches on the top, and they're a little bit hard to get to, but it's better than having them on the bottom or the back. But anyway, I had to set the gain controls down to the lowest level, and still had to set my DAC, which I was using the Topping D70S. I had to set the output of that down 10 decibels, or it was just giving me too much gain. And even the hardest to drive headphones, like the Hi-Fi Man HE560, I was only at like 9 o'clock on the dial if I didn't turn the output of the DAC down a little bit. So not sure why that was, why I had to mess with that, but once I got that dialed in, the right output level from the DAC and the right gain level on the amp, it was an absolutely beautiful sounding amp and could be used with anything from very efficient dynamic driver headphones to the hardest to drive planar magnetics. I'm going to jump up to the next category, and that's $1,501 to $2,000. And my number one favorite solid state amp in that category is going to be the Audio GD Master 9, which you can see at the top up here, stacked with the R8 MK2 DAC, the big black units up there. And I've had that for about 4 years now. It's been my reference amp, and still love that amp, but I just found out tonight that that amp is no longer being made. It's been replaced with the HE9LE, and that currently sells directly through Audio GD for $1,750, but you're probably looking at $150 to $200 on top of that to get it shipped here from China. I did order mine directly from Audio GD and actually had it 10 days after I placed the order, so getting it from China wasn't a problem. The only place that I could find that was still selling new units of the Master 9 was Underwood Hi-Fi, and company I've dealt with quite a bit actually. They own LSA, and I've reviewed some I think 2 or 3 LSA headphones, 3 and an LSA amp now. But anyway, Underwood Hi-Fi still has the Master 9 listed, but their price is at $21.99. So that would kick it up into the next category over $2,000. But anyway, the Master 9, what I love about it is it's so versatile. You can use it with any headphone, from IEMs to the hardest to drive planar magnetic headphones. It's rated, I think, 9 watts per channel into 40 ohms. It has 5 sets of inputs and 3 sets of outputs, adjustable gain, and I love the volume control. It's a 100-step resistor ladder volume control, and it's huge. It's 17 inches square, it weighs 32 pounds, but I think it sounds as good as any solid state amp that I've heard so far, and just because of all the connections and everything, it's just so versatile that it's been my reference amp for like 4 years. Going into tube amps in that same price category, $1,500 to $2,000, I just got this one in about, I don't know, a month and a half ago, and haven't even done a full review on it yet. I did do my first impressions. That's the Felix Audio Elise, which is sitting right here, and that's also an OTL Type 2 amp, and just really impressed by this amp. It just has such a warm, rich sound, but very clean, very detailed, a huge sound stage that currently sells for, in the USA, at $1,995. I think that's through Upscale Audio. I think it's something like $1,699 or €1,750 directly from Felix Audio. They are are out of, where's Felix Audio? Out of Poland. So anyway, it's an OTL tube amp which works really, really well with high impedance headphones such as the ZMF Atrium that I have right now. Also works really well with low impedance dynamic headphones like 32 ohm headphones. It works well with easy to drive planar magnetics like the Kennerton, a little less well with a little bit harder to drive planar magnetics like the Hi-Fi Man, Ananda Stealth, and Aria Stealth, but they still sound very good. The only thing it gives up a little bit is with planar magnetics, the real easy to drive ones like the Kennertons, they just lose a slight amount of bass compared to being hooked up to a good solid state amp, but the harder to drive they get, the more bass they lose. So as an alternative to that, and I'll tell you right now, the ZMF Atrium, I've never heard it sound as good as it does out of the Felix Audio Elise. So if you've got an Atrium or any other high impedance headphone, this is the amp for you. Absolutely love the way the Atrium sounds on this. It just has such a rich, beautiful sound and a huge, really three-dimensional sound stage. But another amp that I want to recommend in the same category is sitting right next to it right here. That's the Waveborn Edelweiss Power Amp, Edelweiss 3 Power Amp Plus that has a retail price of $19.95. And I did want to mention that both of these Waveborn amps here are both still in the prototype stage, and I believe they are available. You can buy a prototype, but they're still not in production. They're still working on, improving them till the point that there is it sound as good as they can. And I think both of these are at that point that the sound is, outstanding. Now it's just a few matters of working out some cosmetic details, that sort of thing. But I think if you contact Waveborn through their Facebook page, you can get a prototype if you want. So that's why I am talking about this. Anyway, this one here is different from the others. The others are OTL type. This is a transformer coupled amp, and it's rated at what I think is a very conservative 3 watts per channel. And the difference is this amp will drive any headphone I can throw at it. Anything from super sensitive, efficient headphones all the way up to the hardest to drive planar magnetics I have, like the Hi-Fi Man HE560 and the Hi-Fi Man HE400 SE, and it has more than enough power to drive those. And when you get into the planar magnetics, this for a tube amp just blows away the rest of the tube amps. Starting with the Kennertons, which are the easiest to drive of the planar magnetics I've reviewed so far. Using them on this amp compared to the Felix Audio, they have just a little bit more bass, a little bit more punch, a little bit more dynamic sound. Okay, if you go up to a little bit harder to drive, which would be the Ananda and the Aria Stealth, there's a bigger difference. There's definitely more punch and more weight to the bass using this because it's not an OTL, it's a transformer coupled amp, and it just matches up better with the planar magnetic headphones. Then if you get up into the harder to drive, like the HE560, which is harder to drive than the Sundara or the original Aria, there's a huge difference. Now this has very punchy, very strong bass, where the bass starts getting soft on any of the OTLs, which include either of these Felix Audios or the Waveborn down at the end. So for especially hard to drive planers, if you want a tube amp, this is the way to go. So that's why I wanted to mention both of those. And then in that same category, 1500 to 2000, I wanted to talk about my an amp DAC combo that falls in that price range at $1,744, and that's the Burson Conductor 3 reference, which you can see sitting right here. And that is a combination, a very nice DAC, you know, very high quality DAC that on its own would probably sell for $600 or $700, combined with a very, very good amp. This thing's got tons of power. I think it's rated at something like 7 or 8 watts per channel. Very clean. Will drive any headphone in existence. I heard it works real well even with the Hi-Fi Man Sasvara. So anyway, a very nice DAC and amp both for $1,744. It's kind of medium size. It's fairly large, it's fairly heavy, very well built, but very nice sounding. I think the amp is pure Class A. Has a slightly on the warm side of neutral sound, just beautiful, and I don't think I've heard anyone yet say that they don't like that amp. Okay, I'm going to jump up to $2,000 to $2,500, and that's my last category because I haven't reviewed any amps higher than that price yet. Excuse me just a second. Still heating with wood, and it dries the house out a bit. And probably notice I can't drink out of my normal big silver insulated cup yet because of the Bell's palsy. I spill all over myself, so I still have to use a squeeze bottle. You know, it's either that or a sippy cup. So anyway, thanks for putting up with all my nonsense because of this Bell palsy thing, but hopefully I'm going to get through this soon. So anyway, getting back, $2,000 to $2,500. My number one pick, and that's because it just has such a clean, detailed sound, probably the cleanest of any amp I've reviewed so far, and that's the Headamp GSX Mini. And that amp does sell for under $2,000 in its base. I can't think of the word I'm trying to think of. In its stock form, it sells for $19.95. But the one that I reviewed had an upgrade volume control. It had a resistor ladder volume control, which was a $200 option. And that currently sells at $21.95 at that with that option on it. So that's why I put it in this category. The one I actually reviewed would currently sell for $21.95. I don't have that here to show you. I reviewed it probably about 3 years ago. Anyway, exceptionally clean, exceptionally detailed sound. I would say just pretty much neutral to slightly on the warm side of neutral. Has a lot of features. It's just a beautiful amp. If you have a hard to drive planar magnetic, I would suggest using the balanced output. The single-ended output was a little lacking in power for some of the harder to drive planar magnetics. If you have something like an HE560 or something, you're going to want to use a balanced cable and use the 4-pin XLR output on that. But just a beautiful sounding amp, and I couldn't compare. I didn't have it at the same time to compare to some of the other amps that I did have it at the same time as the Audio GD Master 9, and I actually could hear slightly more detail, slightly more texture in female vocals with the Headamp. So just an outstanding amp, and sells for $21.95, and that is my first pick in this category. Want to give an honorable mention to the SPL Phonitor XE that currently sells for $24.99 without a built-in DAC or add another, I think it's 600 or 700 onto that, and you can get it with a built-in DAC. But anyway, another solid state amp, absolutely beautiful sound, tons of features, including what SPL calls a matrix, which is a crossfeed, which, and on that particular amp, had several adjustments. You could not only turn the crossfeed on and off, but you could adjust the angle. What it's supposed to do is simulate speakers instead of headphones. And you could adjust the angle of the speakers from anywhere being close together to be real wide. And you could adjust the amount of crossfeed from just a little bit to a lot, where you were hearing both channels almost equally out of both ears. And it did actually make it sound a lot more like speakers, because with a speaker you're hearing both speakers with each ear, where with headphones you're hearing one channel with one ear and the other channel with the other. So it did make it sound a lot more like speakers. I didn't use that feature a whole lot, because I do like the exaggerated stereo effect of headphones, so but it did work really well and did do what it was supposed to do. So I love that amp, and I just absolutely love the VU meters on the front of it, and had no complaints at all. It's made in Germany, very well built, and an amp that I wish I could have kept, or I had the option to buy it, but it just wasn't in my budget, so unfortunately I had to send that one back. Another honorable mention in that price category is the Wells Audio Milo that I reviewed quite a while ago. And the Wells Audio Milo, you can get it with several different options, and if you get just the plain Milo, it actually starts at $16.99, but it goes all the way up to, I think, $3,300, and I think there might even be a reference version of the Milo that I think is maybe $5,000. I'm not sure about that price. But anyway, the reason I put it up in this over 2,000 category is the one that I actually reviewed had a few options, including a resistor ladder volume control, and I think it had all Vichy, it's hard to say right now with the bells, but it had all Vichy resistors in it, which I think is a couple $100 option. And I believe the model I reviewed went for $2,250. So anyway, I did want to give that amp an honorable mention for several reasons. Number one, it just has huge amounts of clean power. I believe that amp is rated at 12 watts per channel into 32 ohms, and I think that was at 0.006% distortion. So where most headphone amps are rated, their power rating is at 1% distortion. This is at 0.006% and still put out 12 watts per channel. So without a doubt, the most powerful headphone amp I've ever reviewed so far, and has a very warm, very rich, but yet very detailed sound. And actually, it is the most tube-like sounding amp I've heard over the $1,000 mark, and a solid state amp. Very warm tube-like sound. And I'll be honest with you, while I was reviewing that, I had the original version 1 of the Hi-Fi Man Aria, and it sounded better on that amp than any other amp I tried. So just that amp is absolutely incredible for hard to drive planar magnetic headphones, and I mean anything from like it'd probably work all right with like probably the Ananda and the Aria Stealth, and worked great with the Sandara and the harder to drive like the HE560, but that amp will drive any headphone on the planet. I know it's got enough power for the Abyss, it's got enough power for the Sisvara, it's got enough power for the SC6. I don't have those headphones, but I've heard that it has plenty of power for those. Anyway, but the one weakness with that amp, in its stock form, it doesn't have a gain control. I think there is an option now to get it with a gain control where you can turn the gain down a little bit, but the way I reviewed it, it was set at like 30 decibels of gain, and because of that, it had too much background noise to use with efficient, low impedance dynamic driver headphones, like say a Grotto SR80 or something like that. You could hear a little bit of background hiss. But once you got up to something like the Sandara or something like that, no background hiss at all, dead quiet. So that headphone amp, really recommend it for hard to drive headphones. And that's pretty much the story with all Wells Audio amps. Warm, tube-like sound, great musicality, and but they're all made for hard to drive headphones, not efficient headphones. So that wraps up my recommendations at those three price ranges. So I did want to give out some awards. I've actually got several of them that I guess I'll start on that right now. Give me just a second to get another drink. Still, it's a little bit exhausting trying to speak clearly with the bells. It still takes a lot more effort than normal, so please be patient with me. I try to. My brain is thinking faster than my mouth can talk right now, so at times I feel like I'm slurring my words a little bit, but I do appreciate the fact that I've had a ton of views on my last 3 videos that I've done since this happened, and really appreciate people continuing to watch my videos. So anyway, I've got some awards I want to give out. Most versatile amp over $1,000. And I mean an amp that does everything and works with every headphone. I'm going to give that to the Audio GD Master 9. And that's the exact reason I've been using that for 4 years as my reference amp, because of all those inputs and everything. Excuse me, it's great for hooking up 2 or 3 DACs at the same time and being able to jump back and compare them. Also has memory on the volume settings of each of the inputs. So you can, say I hook up 2 DACs to it, and it has 2 sets of balanced inputs, actually 3 if you count the AE, SS inputs. So anyway, say I hook up 2 DACs. I can volume match the 2 and then switch back and forth between the inputs without having to mess with the volume control, and it's one of the only amps I've seen that does that. There's a few now that do, but most don't. Cleanest sound of any amp over 1,000 I've reviewed so far. Giving that one to the Headamp GSX Mini. Most clean power. We spoke about that a second ago. That goes to the Wells Audio Milo. Best headphone amp for high impedance headphones, like the ZMF headphones that I think are all 300 ohms. There's a lot. Bear makes high impedance headphones. Sennheiser makes high impedance headphones. There's several companies out there that do. My recommendation, if you got a ZMF, number 1 recommendation is the Felix Audio Elise. The most tube-like sound from a solid state amp. Given that this, once again, over 1,000, I'm giving that to the Wells Audio Milo. The amp DAC combo of the year, over $1,000, the Burson Conductor 3 reference. Best OTL tube amp, I'm going to give that to the Felix Audio Elise. Now, this one this is kind of a new one that I came up with this year. The best tube amp for playing any headphone. Basically the most versatile tube amp that you can hook any headphone up to it. Because OTL tube amps just don't work well with hard to drive planar magnetic headphones. So the best tube amp that will play any headphone out there, I'm going to give that number one to the Power Amp Plus right here by Waveborn. And I'm going to, the runner up in that is going to go to the Wells Audio Dragon, which is a hybrid type tube amp. Both of those can play any headphone that I've thrown at it, and right now I've got about 24 headphones laying around, and both of them will play them all well. Best looking solid state amp. I'm going to give that to, and this is totally subjective, everyone's going to have their different opinions, but I just love the way the SPL monitor looks with all the knobs and buttons on the front and those VU meters, and I just think it's so cool looking. So SPL monitor XE for best looking solid state, and I'm going to give best looking tube amp to the Felix Audio Elise sitting right here. It's just got such a, it's just a very simple, very clean, very basic look, and those 4 big tubes sticking out the top, I just love the way that thing looks. My award for my favorite, or what I think are the best sounding solid state amps, and I couldn't decide on this one, so I picked 2 winners, and I'm going to give that to, I'm going to call it a tie and give that to the Headamp GSX Mini and the SPL Monitor XE. And then best tube amp, I'm going to give that one to, it's also going to be a tie, I couldn't decide on that one. I'm going to give that to the Power Amp Plus, sitting right here by Waveborn, and the Felix Audio Elise. And the reason I couldn't decide on that is for high impedance headphones like the ZMF, I think the Felix Audio Elise actually sounds slightly better. They have a very, very similar sound, even though this is a transformer coupled amp. The sound is very similar, but there's something with the synergy of the Elise and the ZMF that it just gives it a really three-dimensional sound stage. Like I said, very similar sound, but more depth to the sound stage from the Elise. That could be a tube issue, and it's very possible swapping out some different tubes in the Waveborn could solve that problem. But right now, the way they sit, I would say for a ZMF dynamic, it sounds slightly better from the Elise, but if I listen to planar magnetics, the harder they get to drive, the more the improvement jumping over to the Waveborn. Easy to drive planars like the Kennertons, the Waveborn sounds slightly better, a little bit more weight and punch to the bass. Harder to drive planars, the harder they get, the bigger the advantage to the Waveborn. Hard to drive planars, no competition. The Waveborn has way more slam and way more weight to the bass than the Felix Audio. If I go to a low impedance dynamic headphone, once again they sound very similar. So because the Felix Audio does so well with the high impedance headphone, I love it because of that. The Waveborn is more versatile and works with more, that works with any headphone. This will work with any headphone I have. So I really couldn't make up my mind. So like I said, my other award, my Amp of the Year award, and this is the best headphone amp, over $1,000 for this year. My pick once again is a tie, and it's going to go to these 2 amps right here. Felix Audio Elise and Waveborn Edelweiss 3 Power Amp Plus. Once again, this is still in the prototype stage. you could probably arrange to buy a prototype, or you could wait a while until the production models come out, and that, like I said, still refining the cosmetics a little bit on those. I did have one more award I wanted to give before I wrap this up, and that is Most Bang for the Buck Award, and that is going to go to the Burson Conductor 3 reference. You are getting a great DAC and an outstanding amp for $1,744, and where none of these others have a DAC included, and you're looking at probably at least $600-700 for a DAC of that quality that would be added on to the price of any of these other amps. So most bang for the buck of this year, because it's a DAC amp combo of great quality, like I said, fantastic amp. Holds its own against any of these. Burson Conductor 3 reference. So anyway, that wraps up this video. Sorry it got a little bit long. And I did want to mention the hi-fi, or the headphone experience on Facebook is up to 21.4 thousand members. It's growing at like 20 members per day, every day. So anyway, you're all welcome to join us over there. This video helped you, please give me a thumbs up, and please subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't already. Once again, thanks for watching my video.